Welcome to another episode of Dangerous Dinosaur. Uh, I think I need to explain a little bit what I'm trying to accomplish here. I came from a small town environment, went to University of Colorado, went to graduate school there, then went to law school in Chicago, and came back to Colorado to practice law. I didn't plan to practice law, I planned to be an academician, but the Vietnam War got in the way, so once here I was stuck here. What I'm trying to do now is I'm pushing 80 years of age, which is old in anyone's view. Of those 80 years, I practiced law for 50, and I've been retired for a while. And during those 50 years, I have tried cases in several different states, several different federal jurisdictions, traveled all over the country, was regional counsel for a group called the Italian American Civil Rights League, represented a lot of government officials, politicians, rich kids, poor kids, screw-ups, criminals, just about anything you can imagine. I had sort of a Peter Pan existence. I had a different career than most lawyers. Didn't make a lot of money, but had a lot of experiences. I've been written about in a few books. Probably one of the first ones that is written about my cases was Sally Denton's Bluegrass Conspiracy. I represented many major drug defendants, half of which were government officials. I don't type. I started out practicing by dictating. And I've got a lot of information. I've had a lot of experiences. I've represented organized crime people. I've represented CIA people, some of whom were both major drug dealers, minor drug dealers, hippies, all kinds of different people, all kinds of cases. Most of what I've done was been confined to what I would call constitutional law and the constitutional implications thereof. Some of the federal jurisdictions I've been in is two different jurisdictions in Texas, actually three different jurisdictions, Dallas, Pecos, Odessa, and El Paso. New Orleans, Jackson, Mississippi, Chicago, Milwaukee, Northern District of California, Middle District of California, and the Southern District of California, Arizona, state and federal, New Mexico state, Wyoming state and federal, Colorado, of course, state and federal, Nebraska state and federal, Florida federal, Massachusetts federal, New York state, well, I'm sure I can think of some more, Wisconsin state and federal, Montana state. So I've had a lot of different experiences, had a lot of different types of clientele, had a lot of different constitutional cases, had a lot of cases where I've got various procedures and statutes, etc., declared unconstitutional. And by and large led a Peter Pan existence. At my age, I'm trying to get my story out. Since I don't type and have arthritis, I have to dictate. And since I don't know how to edit, and I've got a lot to say and very little time to say it, I've had several illnesses over the last few years, broken bones, etc. And currently I've been diagnosed with MRSA and am taking medication for that. Hopefully it works. In any event, I'm trying to tell my story. I don't have time, nor the inclination, nor the skills to edit and make a more professional presentation. I'm hoping most of you will understand and judge me by the substance and not the form. Actually, Max Weber once said, when a society picks form over substance, that the society's on its way to decay. So hopefully we're not decaying, and you will forgive my various methodological faux pas and certain ramblings when I get off the track. And it's my hope that someday somebody with a little ambition and a little skill might take these videos and edit them into a reasonable manner that might appeal to somebody. But otherwise, if you want to keep the context going, no matter how crude, please like my videos, recommend them to others, and help spread the word. At a later date, I'm going to talk about a case I handled in Canada involving the Canadian Research Council Translation Branch, and I'm mentioning it now so that some of you will, with ambition or whatever, might look it up on the internet and see what it is, because it's going to be an interesting case involving that agency, the CIA, and CQHQ, British NSA equivalent. I have another one dealing with the Mexican government I'm going to talk about. And the one today deals with the Mexican government and my experience there. Now, one of the clients I've had that I represented for quite a while built a cement boat in Hong Kong. He sailed the boat from Hong Kong to Canada and down the coast around Baja into La Paz, which is the capital of the Baja state. And it was a 55-foot sailboat. It had a galley, it had staterooms, etc. And he used it to charter fishing groups out of Mexico. Well, La Paz is a Navy harbor, and he was doing okay there until one day a cartel member approached him about hiring him for a fishing trip for he and some of his friends. Well, unbeknownst to my client, the cartel guy was under surveillance. So I'm finishing up a job I had in Las Vegas, and I get a call. And it's one of my client's friends who said I'm wanted down in Mexico right away, and I should call the client's brother to get further details and get to him in Arizona as quickly as possible. So I booked a flight to Tucson, rented a car, and drove to where I needed to be in Arizona, and was told by the guy that we had to get the sailboat out of La Paz because they had just arrested my client on some charge that he didn't know what it was, but they were thinking that maybe the boat would be condemned or confiscated or whatever. So there were very few flights to La Paz, but my client's brother had a Bonanza, and he'd been up all night partying a little bit, but he said, "We can take a Bonanza, I'll fly down there if you'll share some of the flying." And I said, "Well, I'm not in much condition to fly. I've been up all night traveling, partying, etc. And I don't know if I can stay awake that much, but I'll try." So we gas up the plane, take off, and just land the other side of the border for customs clearance and immigration. And then it was across the Coronado Sea to La Paz. Well, thank God for autopilot. We set the autopilot, and I napped a little bit. And all of a sudden, I'm getting jabbed in the shoulder. And the brother says, "Take over for a while. I can't keep my eyes open." So the difference with the Bonanza and other aircraft is that the Bonanza has a single yoke that you slide back and forth between the left seat and the right seat. So he slid the yoke over to me, and I took over. And since it was on autopilot, there wasn't much to do. And the pilot went to sleep. And I was flying over the water, sort of dozing, daydreaming. The next thing I know, I was awakened suddenly by a little turbulence in the plane. And I looked over and the pilot was asleep. And I thought, well, he had the stick. I'd given it back to him maybe half an hour earlier, and we were in deep shit. So I wake him up, and I'm just terrified and stay awake all the way to La Paz. Ask him if he's in shape to land, and he said yes. And we were met by one of my client's friends, taken to a hotel or motel out of town, which was, by the way, owned by an American named Engelbert Humperdinck, who was an entertainer, and I'd just seen him in Las Vegas a few months previously. Anyway, I register, take a nap, and get ready to talk to the ship's captain, who told me that they got my client and they arrested him because he was taking illegal charters without a license out of La Paz. And he was charging actually a good fee for these charters, in the neighborhood of $10,000 per charter. So he was doing pretty good. It wasn't bad for a week, and food, etc. And he was enjoying it. All of a sudden, the local constabulary come and bust him. And the brother had given me some cash in which to get supplies and move the boat. Well, the captain said he was in the middle of something, and I think he had some girl or something he wanted to say goodbye to. In any event, the next day, just as we were getting ready to go to the ship and move it, the Navy moved in on it and towed it away. So we didn't need to get supplies after all. Well, the next thing I did is I booked a flight to Mexico City. and that way I could get another flight back to either Arizona or Colorado, depending on the situation. Well, I get to Mexico City, and I check in, and I'm told to check into a hotel there. So I check into this hotel near Zona Rosa, and there's $1,000,000 waiting for me there, just for expenses. And I was told to wait at the hotel for further instruction. Well, a day or two later, I get further instruction, and I'm told that my client needed to be sent to Reclusorio Norte, the Reclusorio in Mexico City, and we should get him away from the locals because they drowned him 3 times and revived him, and it was a dangerous situation because they wouldn't believe that he was just hauling a charter, and suspected him of being a major drug trafficker. To me, it didn't make sense somebody would traffic large quantity of drugs in a sailboat and try to outrun the Coast Guard, but logic didn't really take place those days in drug enforcement. Anyway, I got local counsel, and he arranged through various means to get the federales to take jurisdiction over my client, and he was moved to Mexico City, to Reclusorio Norte. Well, after hanging around there a few days, I arranged for a cab driver who spoke English and could serve as an interpreter, and hired him to take me out to the Reclusorio. Well, it was really an interesting experience. I go out there, and they have these little stations that you have to go through to get to visit somebody in the jail. You make your appointment, and you go to Station 1, and you lay some money on the guy at Station 1, and there was 18 stations you had to go through. Well, I didn't have enough money without using hundreds to lay money at each station. So I get down to the end, and I'd been laying $5 bills on these people, and I had 4 stations to go, and all I had was hundreds. So I told the driver, I said, well, we'll go, I don't want to do this, and I'll just get somebody with the embassy to accompany out here tomorrow. Pardon me. He said, no, let's not do that. And he goes back to the beginning and collects $2 from each of the stations we'd been to previously, because it really wasn't the amount of the toke or the amount of the payment. It was the fact that you recognized the person there and gave him something. So I collected from the previous people and then spread it out among the last few stations, and even had a few dollars left over, which came in handy later. So finally I get in to see my client, and he explains to me that they dunked him and he drowned, and then they would revise him and question him some, and then throw him in a swimming pool and drown him again. And they did that 6 times, which to me is probably worse than waterboarding. At least it seemed that way. And that was one reason we had to get him out of the locals' hands, because they didn't pull that shit on the federal level. The federalities were a little more straight. They just beat the shit out of people. Anyway, I'm sitting there, and there's a guy keep interrupting. He was offered me a Coca-Cola. And my client said it's customary here. Many of the prisoners are vendors themselves, and they support each other by buying some of the stuff. So I bought a round of Pepsi for the driver, my client, and myself. And we were left alone. One of the things I noticed, though, was I noticed couples there, men and women walking around the quadrangle holding hands, little children playing on swing sets and teeter-totters and merry-go-rounds, and families sitting at benches, park benches, eating sandwiches together or otherwise picnicking. And it was really interesting because these were supposed to be Mexico's most dangerous criminals there. So I explained to one of the guards that I was a criminologist from the States, taught criminology at a university, and I wondered if I could visit with the warden, which was probably one of the most eye-opening events in my whole career, talking to the Mexican warden. So after getting my client's story, planning how to defend him and wondering whether in Mexico anybody would believe it, but I thought we could maybe convince somebody. I got my appointment with the warden. And I explained who I was, and I said, I'm real curious what you're doing here. It seems to be very enlightened, and you have conjugal visitations, I understand, and I'd like to talk to you about it. He looks at me and he says, he says, you Americans come down here and think we're a backward people, and you're amazed at some of the things we've done here. But he said, it's funny because what I'm doing here comes from research from your country. We know that these men are sometimes going to be released, and the biggest stability in their release is going to be families. So we strive to keep families together, to keep them functioning. And that's what we're doing here. He said, I don't see why you should be so amazed that we're doing it. It's a lot of countries in the world are doing it, and it's based on your research. You think we're backward down here and kind of stupid maybe, but at least we don't disregard our own research like your countries do. It stuck home with me. It really did. I was very impressed with that. So determined to maybe cause some reform when I got back to the States, I took notes and proposed certain things and wrote up a proposal for the Boulder County probation department and a few things like that. And left for the day. So that afternoon I arranged for co-counsel, different co-counsel. I then arranged for a bond hearing and a series of bond hearings actually, and went back to, I retained the bondsman, I retained the avocate, the lawyer, and that day went back to visit my client. We go through the same thing, but I'm prepared this time, and the guards remember me from the last time. They're very cordial, very helpful, helped escort me through in record time. I got there and I bought the Pepsis for everybody as expected, and I'm talking to my client, explaining the procedures, how we're going to do it, and what should happen, when she should have preliminary hearing, and whether or not he wanted me down there for some of the preliminary hearing or not. But at the very least, I would stay in touch with the local lawyer and help him to, do whatever he wanted me to do. So we worked on that a little bit. And I'm looking around and I said, God, some of these prisoners have really, really ugly wives. My client starts laughing. And I said, what's so funny? He said, those aren't wives. He says, today is hooker day. All of those guys are bachelors, and those are the hookers that they can come in on conjugal visits, which I thought was rather amusing. I decided not to put that in any reports to authorities here, because being the Puritans that we are, probably wouldn't have been appreciated in the same way it was in Mexico, or in some of my friends, in fact. So that's my story of my visit to Mexico. At a later date, I'll tell you how the case turned out, but I wanted to get that part of it in there. And before I go on to the next one, probably next episode, if you're interested and I get enough response, I might talk about how I got hired by the Italian American Civil Rights League as their token WASP to represent Italians in their crusade against the Department of Justice, or injustice as they called it, and related to a few other things. And with that connection, it led me to a lot of CIA connections, and where I was able to fit together pieces from the drug smuggling, drug gun trades, CIA mafia, Roselli, Giancana, Castro assassination, how two of my clients worked for Jack Ruby, running guns to Cuba when Jack Ruby was with military intelligence, and a few things like that. I also might offer some comments about my younger brother's attachment with a unit called Blue Light when he was in the Air Force. Again, I'll give you time to look that up so you have some idea what I'm talking about. In the meantime, I hope you like my program. I hope you send questions. I hope you write comments, even if they call my attention to how stupid my program is or how stupid my ramblings are. At least it's feedback, and I value feedback, and I try to answer them all together. And the more subscribers I get, the more inclined I'm to pursue the CIA drug connection as best I can and lay that out for you. So, please like my videos. Please subscribe to my videos. Please tell me how much you like them or hate them, or how much they bore you, or whatever. Make a comment, please. Thank you very much. Have a good week. Dennis out.